Have you found yourself so frustrated, enraged, overwhelmed, out of control in this journey that you've actually snapped? This is not a pleasant place to be, but chances are all of us have been there. One of the things that often happens in the aftermath of finding out about infidelity, we know it's going to cause an explosion of chaos and uncertainty. But one of the things it often does is it's going to create emotions for the wayward and betrayed spouse that are very negative, scary, powerful, and emotions that we don't have any reference to deal with to know how to handle them. When you find out you've been betrayed, the response, as you know, isn't just anger, but what happens a lot of the times is just this rage. And a lot of us get scared at the idea of what rage is because it feels very out of control. It's helpful to know, though, as we begin to name what that emotion is a response, it's that signal. It's a pretty natural and normal human response to finding out you've been betrayed. And if you've been wayward, you don't know how to handle that. And the other powerful emotion that can happen once, what you're acting out has been discovered is this immense feeling of a spiraling loss that's so out of control. It's pure desperation. And it can cause an enormous sense of anxiety, fear, and shame. One of the things about all these negative emotions that you're starting to feel day and night is if you notice, we don't like them. And if you can even pay attention to the pit in our stomach that we have when we feel negative things, it feels heavier. Pain just kind of weighs on us. It can be very confusing and disorienting. And we don't like it. We don't want to tolerate that tension. And so we want to push it away. Our brains are hardwired for such explosions. Our entire circuitry is wired to express rage before we think. But how many of us know that a lot of times in that we just misfire? None of us like to feel uncomfortable. So it's really natural to want to avoid feeling those feelings because we don't know what to do with them. And I will never forget in my own recovery, one of the days that I snapped. You have to know, for a lot of my own life, I just kind of lived out this place that maybe it was my job to always make everybody around me happy. I certainly avoided anger. And without even knowing it, I was far too good at reading the emotions, detecting the feelings of everyone else around me. But I really didn't have any idea what my own needs and my own feelings were. The thing that I've learned now is emotions just are. They're ours alone. But shortly after the discovery of my last affair, there was a day that my husband and I were sitting outside of a hospital on a really, really cold December day. And what really stunk about it is I had not even thought to bring a coat. I think it was 4 degrees. And we were sitting outside of the hospital in his company car because I had gone in for several hours to complete a full STD panel. It was suggested by our therapist in order to make my husband feel safe. So I had just come face to face with some of my own embarrassment. And I remember the humiliation I felt when the nurse asked for the reason for the panel. I was cold, I was ashamed, I was frustrated, I was overwhelmed. And I really, in that moment, wanted to just go away. So as we were sitting in my husband's company car in the parking lot, I think I had reached for my cell phone just to find something to try to calm down. As we all know, cell phones can be a huge trigger. So as I was sitting in the car and I reached for my phone, this is when it happened. I don't know what was actually said, but I remember in that moment, something inside of me broke and I snapped. I mean, I lost it. It was really simple. It was really primitive. And in that moment, I know I screamed, I can't do this anymore. And I got the cell phone and I flung it of what I thought was on the dashboard of the car. And that's unfortunately when not just my emotion snapped, but the cell phone then accidentally hit the windshield. And remember, it was really cold. And in an instant, the entire windshield shattered. How was my husband going to explain to his company's insurance why the windshield shattered? I mean, was he going to say it was my wayward wife who lost her temper after getting her STD test? I don't think so. But here's kind of what happened that day. Believe it or not, if we can try to suspend our own judgment of our emotions as okay or bad or good, it's a lesson in reality that sometimes, again, our emotions just are. We can only kind of handle so much. And we can't change, we can't manage, we can't dictate anyone else's emotions. All we can do is try to understand and accept what's happening within us. I mean, are there certain emotions that you've found that you want to avoid? Are there certain times you realize when you've lost it and you've snapped, do you immediately judge it? Do you feel guilty? Or do you feel righteous and justified in what you've done? Both of those are kind of the places we don't want to go. Accepting our emotions is really, really different from accepting the situation that caused the bad emotions. And I'll say that again. To accept what we're feeling, accepting that emotion is very, very separate and different from accepting the situation that created it. That day in the car, I don't ever want to go back to that, but I can promise this. It was one of the first times that I can look back and say I didn't avoid what I was feeling. I didn't suppress it. Something kind of broke and it came out in me that I had held pent up inside for years. And that's the upside to our emotional wiring, is that the very same thing that can spark rage or a snap in us is the very same system that actually can allow us to do really impossible or heroic, selfless things. And this is where you hear the stories of like someone that doesn't even know what they're doing and they can like lift an entire car just to save someone maybe trapped underneath. So both of you on either side of the equation are gonna need to continue to find some safe spaces to figure out what you're feeling as it's confusing and really negative and face it. And you're gonna need like-minded people to validate and normalize what you're going through. And most importantly, to offer a non-judgmental space for you to start to express yourself. Infidelity will create a pain like no other. It's gonna create emotions you've never felt or even known how to deal with before. But here's the thing about all of us here at Affair Recovery. We are really real people, and real people that have been through it, and no perfect people, but people that really can meet you exactly in this space. And so if you've never considered joining our library or signing up for one of our courses, we hope you would consider to do that so you don't have to kind of face these really, really confusing and scary emotions alone.